meeting. So disclaimer, we do record our meeting post to YouTube, which is mostly relevant for those of you who are joining on Zoom. My name is Chanel, and I'm the current president of Fresno City Toastmasters. I'm going to firstly welcome to all of our guests. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm going to start our meeting by reading the club mission statement. This is the mission statement for Toastmasters International, so for our club, but all of the clubs as well. Our mission is to provide a supportive and positive learning environment that empowers members to develop communication and leadership skills, which results in greater self-confidence and personal growth. So, wondering what Toastmasters is and why we're here, that's our mission. We, for those of us who are meeting in person, I wanted to give thanks to Michael Wu, who owns this facility and allows us to use it. He's not meeting with us today, but he's the owner of this room. And also, we do have restrooms out that door and around the corner if anybody needs to use them. For everybody who's meeting on Zoom, just the quick housekeeping rules are to keep yourself muted unless you are speaking or called upon. And on Zoom, instead of clapping for applause, we usually do jazz hands to show celebration since you're muted and people can't hear you. So I'm going to be the Toastmaster for today's meeting actually, and I'll start off that. As we go along, everybody has an agenda, and those of you online should have the agenda in the chat as well. We'll be following this pretty closely, and if you're new to Toastmasters, some of the goals that are on here might not make sense just by looking at them, but we're going to explain what they are as we go along. And then at the end of the meeting, there will be a time for questions and answers as well that you can save for that time. So I am our Toastmaster today. The Toastmaster is typically the person in each meeting who opens the meeting and kind of facilitates, helps lead transitions between the different speakers. And the Toastmaster typically also introduces the theme of the meeting. Our theme today is just open house and having guests. So I wanted to give a couple of quick stats about Toastmasters. Toastmasters is actually an international educational nonprofit. There's over 16,000 clubs worldwide in over 130 different countries. And in the United States alone, there's over 8,000 clubs. So it's very much a dynamic, large body of leadership that a lot of people are a part of. So with that, if I'm not missing anything, Joe, anything? Good. Okay.
Club contest coming up for those at least that are.
Yes, I'll mention that again. So for our members, we are going to be having our club contest next month. We previously said it was going to be on the 8th of February. I think that we're actually going to be pushing it back a couple of weeks for those who might be interested in participating to give a little bit more time. We found out that we have a little bit more time until the area contest. So for members, I would encourage you to consider doing a speech. It's going to be an inspirational themed speech, 5 to 7 minutes. So not super long. I'm going to be participating, and I would love to have some competition. So it's not just me. And yes, Emerson.
So when we compete amongst ourselves, will there be a winner that then moves on to a different tier?
Yes. So it's the club contest. The winner of that will go to the area contest, and then area goes to division, district, like nationals, and then all the way to the international contest. And Toastmasters like crowns a world champion of public speaking every year.
Oh, okay. How many speeches did you give in Emerson before joining us?
A few. It was years ago, though.
Yeah,
It must have been
I
like,
think 3 is the limit. So you can compete if you've done at least 3.
oh, okay. Yeah, I've been more than 3.
Yeah.
So with that, I am going to pass the podium virtually over to our general evaluator today, who is Sarah Dawson. She's joining us on Zoom. So we will hear from her now, and she will explain the general evaluator role and then introduce the evaluation team. Sarah?
Well, thank you, Chanel. Like she said, I'm Sarah. I've been part of Toastmasters for probably about 4 years now. Still loving it. It helps me a lot. I there was a job that I wanted and I needed it to have to be able to public speak for, and I got the job and I absolutely loved the job. So welcome. I'm so glad you guys are all here. General Evaluator. One of the things that we do as General Evaluator, we're supposed to prep people before. So there's a whole team of evaluators, and I'm going to introduce them in just a minute. And they'll tell you exactly what their roles are. The purposes of evaluation. So we want to evaluate things so that we can learn and grow as we evaluate it. We don't want it to be condemnation or like, oh, you were really bad at this and that kind of stuff. We want to keep it positive and kind and constructive so that people can learn and grow in each of these areas. So there's some prep work that you do ahead of time, figuring out like who's going to be on your team and letting them, making sure that they know what's happening. And then during the time we're evaluating, like, is everything in place? Like what went well? Are there things that went well? Are there things that we could maybe do better next time? And so that way we're constantly looking for the next thing. So I am first going to introduce our grammarian of the day, and that is Heather Davis.
Thank you, Sarah. As she said, I am the grammarian for the day. And what that is we pick a word for every meeting. And in that meeting, our hope is to have you integrate that into our tabletop topics or however you can within that meeting. I'll be keeping track of who says that. And today's word of the day, I try to make it a little bit easier so everybody can participate. And I put it in the chat for those of you who are on Zoom. And the word of the day is verbalize, which is a verb. And it's to express ideas or feelings in words, especially by speaking out loud. So I hope you all have an opportunity to verbalize how you found out about Toastmasters or what your interests are. We just really are happy to have you here. And I will do my best to keep track with it being a hybrid. Some of you, I don't know your names, but I will do my best. And at the end of the meeting, I will give a report as to who was able to say the word of the day. So the more opportunity, the better. And I'll pass it back to Sarah.
Thank you, Heather. And Farron has double duty today, so she will be our counter and our timer. So go ahead and explain both of those, Farron. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. I have a puppy in the background in case you hear any random squeaking. It's him with his toys. As the counter, I am in charge of keeping track of our crutch words. These are words that we often use in place of a pause. It's just a filler word like saying and so things like that. We like to draw out those pauses. Instead of verbalizing your pauses, just take a breath. That usually works better. I will keep track of all of these words and let everyone know how they did at the end of the meeting. I am also serving as today's timer. I will keep track of the Pathways introduction speech by Joey. It should be 7 minutes. I will give him a green background. Let's see, are they working? There we go. Green background at 5 minutes, yellow background at 6 minutes, and a red background at 7 minutes so that he can wrap it up. And then we also have table topics. Those are 1 to 2 minute speeches. So everyone will see the green at 1 minute, a minute 30, you get yellow, and at 2 minutes, wrap it up with red. And then I will give a report as well at the end of the meeting. And that's all. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Farron. And next up, we have our Zoom master, Joey.
So Joey's here in person. I'm not sure that he's able to respond. If you want to talk about it.
Are you the Zoom master?
I was just going to try to figure that out. Is there any of our board members on Zoom who would be able to take over as Zoom master?
Yeah,
Sarah,
you can send it to me.
Okay, I'll transfer it to you. Joey can still talk about it if you want to. Okay, Sarah, you're the host now. You'll be able to pick.
Thank you. So what's nice with the online is that it's built into the programming, so we can record our meetings via Zoom. The way we used to do it pre-hybrid was we'd have a camera, we had a little camera that we would film our speakers. We did mostly speakers, but sometimes the table topics. And it allows just another layer of feedback where you've heard about, we got an awe counter, which everybody tends to remember. First time they come here, they tend to remember the awe counter. So what the video is really good with is, as you can watch back speech, table topics, as you can see, maybe there's some things that you were doing that our evaluators missed. It could be if we got some nice long hair, we keep flipping it, or we address one side of the room all the time. I can make Denny feel really, really special right now, but then I can really isolate everybody else and they're wondering, how come I'm not getting any attention? So there's some things that we can pick up when it comes to our video on the, so with the hybrid meetings, usually it's somebody who's online that is doing the recording, because it's a little bit easier than reaching over the thing and then doing all that. But for now, today, just giving the little rendition of what the Zoom Master does. And it's not super technical, but for those that are a little bit rough on the technical aspects, usually we give that to somebody who is a little bit more technical. So that's what the Zoom Master will be doing today, is making sure that we're all good on people speaking and highlighting and all that.
Thank you, Joey. That concludes our team. I will get to report back to you at the end and go through the different evaluations, noticed all the great things happening, and so glad that each of you guys are here. And I will hand it back over to Chanel.
Thank you, Sarah. I, as Toastmaster, am going to go ahead and hand it back to Mr. Myers, actually, he's going to be giving us an overview today of the Pathways curriculum, which is the curriculum used in Toastmasters, for our guests specifically, to give you an idea of what that looks like.
Hello again. With Toastmasters, it's a three-pronged effort. I joined back in 2012 when we were in the dinosaur era, where we were both having an actual manual, a book that we would fill out and things like that. And Denny knows what I'm talking about. She's been here almost as long as I have. Back then, for us, it was a transition to get into the actual pathway, the actual online version of this. But in Toastmasters, you're looking at, I came in as I wanted to improve my public speaking. I also found out that you can improve your evaluation skills, which is your listening. You've heard some of the leadership roles, and also leadership. So it's a three-pronged effort. It's public speaking, leadership, and evaluation skills. I learned the other two versus the one I came in actually brought me into this. I wanted to get better on video. I was doing a lot of coaching videos for baseball, softball hitters, and I wanted to get better on film. At the time, there really wasn't a lot of good ones. You got a lot of the ahs and ums and things like that. So what we do here now is we transition into more of an online version of that manual that we used to work out of. So if you join as a member, what you get is you pick a pathway. So you can either pick it manually on your own. So the pathways are different ones. It could be visionary pathway. It'd be a way for you, each speech is tailored to think about the speeches you're going to be making in a visionary type of thing. It could be a technical pathway. It could be it could be a presentations, like public presentations, PowerPoints, things like that. So each pathway, I think there's a dozen of them, 10 to 12 or something like that, 15 of them, different ones. And one that might strike your fancy, you can choose that on your own, or you can go through a little bit of a poll or a quiz, and it'll take you through some questions. You answer those questions, and at the end, it'll recommend a pathway that you can take. Once you get into the pathway, the first three speeches are probably most critical. You can take almost the same speech and redo it 3 times. So there's about 5 levels in each pathway. And at each level, it builds on each other. So the first pathway is the first speech is an icebreaker speech, is what it's called. Typically, an icebreaker speech is about you. It's where us Toastmasters get to learn about our new members. And they give a speech about some aspect of their life. Sometimes they'll do a chronological about their life, bringing them up to this point. I think mine that was done a long time ago, I picked a certain point in my time that was in my life that was maybe shaped my character or whatnot. I gave a speech on just a section of my life that really talked a lot about me. So it could be done in any way. the most popular is the chronological, and then bringing everybody up to speed about why we're in Toastmasters and how that can possibly benefit our life. So the first speech is an icebreaker. You'll get you'll get feedback from an evaluator, and it's friendly feedback. It's not something that the evaluator's gonna come in and slam bash you and talk about how horrible you are and how much farther you need to go before you can be relevant to our club. It's not all about that, as our president talked about in our little blurb on the bottom left of your agenda. It's about growing together and giving good thoughtful feedback that's going to help you for the next one. So that evaluator is going to give you an evaluation, some good things to think about and improve for the next time. On the next speech, you can pretty much do the first speech over, your icebreaker, using that feedback the second time, give that speech, and then you have the third speech. I think the actual third speech is using the feedback to do it again. So you feasibly could just use one speech and improve it 2 other times to do it. So for those that are like, oh my gosh, what do I got to talk about? Do I have to make 3 new speeches, those first 3 speeches out of the gate? And you don't. You can make one speech and then just improve on it as you go. Then at each level, there'll be a little bit more instruction. So if what I do, I help people get into their pathway. I do a step-by-step. So once you get in, I send you an email, step-by-step, right? Step-by-step, those that have gotten it. And it's how to get in, how to get your pathway, how to log in your system. And then once you get logged in and you have your path, then it will take you kind of step-by-step through like a slideshow. And it'll go, maybe it's 10 to 12 different slides that you'll go through, and it just gives you some information on what the speech is going to be about, or what the speech parameters are going to be. You can figure out whatever you want the speech to be about, but it'll just give you those parameters to the skeletal framework, so then you can go within that framework. And then at each level builds on the next, and to where I think it was level 4, was that the one where we started to get more of a freewheeling one, where they'll give you like 10 examples of the electives. Yeah. Yeah, which was kind of cool. And I have to give mine. I've just been busy, haven't been able to, but Chanel, she was able to do it. It's the same one I got to do. But it's interesting. You give a speech, and during the speech, you have people in the crowd that are agitators, right? They're agitators. So you have one person that's maybe on their phone the whole time. And how you address that agitator, they talk about it in the actual speech itself, the guidelines. You might have somebody else who you're giving your speech, and then they just start talking out loud, start giving you their opinion on something. And it was really hard for us outside, when Chanel was giving her speech, to actually do that, because we're taught not to do that. So to be able to be an agitator, and it was interesting. And Chanel did a great job in doing that. So that's an example of, in the electives, which is about level 4, when you get into level 4, there's about 3 or 4 speeches at each level. So you feasibly, at that point, 3 speeches times 4, you're in that 8 to 12, 8 to 10 speech range. So don't be, you're like, oh my gosh, that's going to be really tough. It's going to take some speeches to get there. And you don't have to do that one either. There was, I think, Farron, she did one that was a podcast, where she created a podcast, or even I think a blog too. I think you did the blog and the podcast, Farron. Is that what it was? Yeah. So you like create a blog, and you can create a podcast, and then after you do that, it's like a case study about that. So it's really, they have some really cool little themes as you come through, and helps you provide some framework on what you're going to give your speech on. So that's just a little insight into how it works in pathways. You sign up, obviously, number 1, if you want to, and I'm the treasurer too, by the way. So the cost with this is super low. It's about $60 when you sign up for the first time, $60 to $70, and then after that, renewing, it's right now, because of the COVID stuff, we offer discounts on our club, so it's between $50 and $60 every 2 years, or every year. So it's bi-yearly is what the payment is. And so it's signing up, it's getting signed up in your pathway, getting in your pathway, getting in your first speech, and then giving your speech. And that's basically what it is to be in the pathway. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Joey, for verbalizing that. And I would add also, I think that the neat thing about pathways and full of Toastmasters overall is that it's very customizable to meet this individual speaking and learning needs of each one of us. So pathways provides a guideline and an overall look, but definitely I am going to call up to the podium next Cindy Mason, who is our current club secretary, and she is going to lead us in our table topics for today, which will involve participation from everybody if you're willing.
Hello, everybody. One of the things I want to mention is as I come up, you'll notice that Chanel shook my hand. And we do that so that we never want to leave the podium empty. We do a transition from one to the other, and that's part of what we learn in leadership. Everybody comes to Toastmasters for their own personal reason, and I've made some lovely friends in this club, and we don't have anything in common until we get here. And we find that we're all needing to improve something about our public speaking or our leadership skills. In my case, I'm a person who thinks of a response to something approximately 24 hours after the comment has been made to me. And this is a problem if I have to respond to something quickly. I go into a glazed eye mode. And I needed help with that because it was my turn to become president of our local Rotary Club after putting it off for as many years as possible. I was backed into a corner and I had to do it. So knowing that 2 years ahead of time, I came to Toastmasters in the hope that I would be able to run a meeting and communicate effectively enough to get through my year as Rotary president. I am a professional photographer by trade, which means that if I have a camera in my hand, I can organize a group of 200 people with no problem. I can boss everybody around, but I absolutely have trouble without a camera in my hand. So today, what I'd like to do with our table topics, and this is a little thing that we do, it's very short, it's kind of a little practice that we do every week, and everybody can participate if you want to. I'm going to throw a topic out, and if you'd like to participate, you can come up and talk for 2 minutes, or up to 2.5 minutes, I think is our max. That's where we kick you out, Joey. You can come up and tell us about it. And the table topics I'm going to go easy on you today is, why are you here? What thing about yourself would you like to improve in Toastmasters? Barring that, if you have absolutely nothing to improve, you can tell us about your family. Who would like to go first? Very good. Welcome, Eric.
Introduce yourself too, to help.
Well, my name is Eric Rollins. I'm a fairly new political activist, and because of that, I decided that I needed to be a better speaker. I'm on the radio already. I would think that we would have put the horse before the cart, and I would have decided to do something like learn to be a better speaker first, but I jumped right in. I've been a self-employed businessman for 30 years. And I'm doing all those ums and ahs. I should take a pause. And so it's kind of made me pretty independent. I don't take government's word. Instead, I spend extra time researching and trying to find out for myself, thinking for myself. And that's what led me on this journey. It all really started with COVID. And I was watching what was happening in other countries where it hit first. And from there, it led me to go, oh, wait a minute, we're not hearing the full truth. The government is censoring us. Because of that, I went, I need to do something. And I can't do it alone. I needed to find a way to lead. And so I am the president for the Constitutionalists for California Clovis chapter. And I'm also on the radio speaking out. I made a lot of friends along this journey. But if I'm a leader of a group, I need to find ways to inspire my group to speak out. And I think that's the most important thing, to talk to government and make them realize that they are accountable to the people. So I thank you very much for this time. I think I'm almost to red, so.
Yeah.
Very good, Eric. Good job.
Ums and ahs.
Great.
We have a lot of fun with the ums and ahs. And to be honest with you, we keep everything super fun around here. The idea is to be supportive, not critical. We want to leave here. This is the place where we come to practice. So that when we're in the real situation, when it really counts, we already know what we're doing. Who else would like to go? Very good.
Corinne.
Welcome, Chris.
Well, let me verbalize my background. I'm an attorney, so speaking and throwing a speech is not something new to me, but there is always a room for improvement. Making an opening statement or a closing argument in front of the judge, arguing your point during a hearing. So I'm not a foreigner to speech, but I'm a foreigner in this country in the sense that I came from Armenia in 1987. So one of the problems with my speech is my accent, intonation, and sometimes people probably do not understand what specifically I'm phrasing while I'm talking about the subject. So there is some departments where I could really improve watching all of that. But of course, the main reason here, I was invited. I wanted to know what's going on. I thought it was about champagne and toast. Now I know it's about pizza and speech. So therefore, now I have a better understanding what the club stands for. Although those levels of improvement, when you need to go through categories, there are freestyle speeches I understand, and there are speeches that you have to follow a certain framework. I'm a person that doesn't want to limit his thinking or speaking, so probably that would be challenging too. But I always have a piece of paper in front of me with topics outlined, so I know how it works. But this particular framework is very appealing, and I want to verbalize each point when I go through it, when I do a certain speech on a certain topic. Thank you.
Let's take
Sorry.
It's our transition.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. As a person who speaks freely, that's very good. We need a person like you in the club. Absolutely. You'll challenge us. Yes, Emerson.
Yeah, we're nice.
Come on up.
Hello, Toastmasters. My name is Emerson Estrada, and I joined the club for many reasons, but one of the greatest reasons was sometimes I have many ideas and many positions on different matters, and it's important to be able to verbalize your ideas to groups, especially when it becomes significant in your life. And I'll give some examples. I too am self-employed, and I provide human resource services to companies of different sizes. But as my business began growing, I began recruiting for bigger companies, which when I would go and present my services to a group of owners, what have you, it became a little bit more challenging because you get nervous when you're verbalizing the value of your service and people are watching you and they have poker faces. And so you start thinking things that you shouldn't think, like, what's the response? Are they going to be my client? So Toastmasters has taught me to just focus on what I have to say and say it effectively. Also in my church, I teach a Bible study, and that Bible study is getting bigger. And so Toastmasters helps me be a little bit more comfortable in front of groups. You always get the butterflies in the stomach, but as long as the butterflies fly in formation, I'm good with that. And then lastly, when you go to family gatherings and maybe a funeral, a wedding, a gathering, I would like to be the family member that stands up and says what I mean and expresses my love clearly and concisely so that people know exactly how I feel. Madam Toastmaster?
Oh, I like that. Thank you very much. Very good. Who else would like to tell us why they're here? Besides being invited by Joe.
I'll go.
Welcome. Say your name.
Hello everyone, my name is Manuel. I'm here because I just want to improve my public speaking majority. I just want to be a better leader as well, currently a college student, and also do my online business, which is growing. I have a couple of virtual contractors, which I want to kind of lead a better team and just kind of express my ideas a little bit more. And yeah, just pretty much that.
That's great. You want to tell us a little bit more about your contracting?
I have like online media brands, which you know, we provide like video production, graphic design for a lot of entrepreneurs and stuff. And yeah, that's what I do.
That's awesome.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much. Good job. Very good. Who else would like to come up? All of you out there in Zoom land.
I'll go.
Yay. Go Heather.
My name is Heather Davis. I work for Hines Hospice. And when I was in a meeting with my supervisor to try to figure out what professional goals I can set for myself, one of the ones that I really wanted to get better at is public speaking. When I was younger, it never seemed to be a problem for me, but as I got older, I became more insecure and anxious about putting myself out there. And so joining Toastmasters is my way of being able to reclaim that and to be more, what's the word I'm looking for? Confident in myself that I can actually speak publicly. It will help me and has already helped me with my job, being able to reach out to potential volunteers at our hospice home and for our patient care. And for me, just to be more concise with my words. I feel like a lot of times I can ramble. And so the Toastmasters has really helped keep that in check for me and for how I just want for people to perceive me. I want to show professionalism and confidence, and Toastmasters has allowed me to do that. And I've been with them for a little over a year now, I believe, and I've learned a lot. So I hope for those who are considering joining our group that you would be a part of it, because it really has helped my professional goals, and I know it will help yours too.
Thank you, Heather. I've experienced the same thing myself. Just coming here every week makes me more out there during the week. Who else would like to tell us about their reason for coming to Toastmasters or about yourself, something about your family?
I can go.
Okay, great, Monica.
So my name is Monica Diaz, and I joined Toastmasters about 2 months ago. So I'm the newest member here. The reason why I joined Toastmasters was part of my individual development plan for my job was to reach out to a Toastmasters group and become part of it. With this, I hope to have a lot of growth in my public speaking. I know I was okay with speaking publicly, but now that I'm in a different job and doing everything virtually, it's a little bit harder to verbalize yourself with new people that you have to train, especially with the new computers and the virtual stuff that we are doing nowadays. A lot of people tend to keep their cameras off. So it's like you're kind of talking to yourself. So with Toastmasters, I'm developing that with my pathways and learning how to do more presentations virtually and doing it with masks because it's very hard. Sorry, I'm doing a lot of ums, but it's really hard to speak when you're wearing a mask. But I hope you take the time to look at this program. I hope you take the time to be part of our crew, because since I've been here, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot from different people, seen different styles, and I hope to incorporate that in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Monica. Monica, you have really gotten good at smiling behind that mask because I can see it in your eyes. That's great. Who else would like to go? I'm gonna start calling them people.
All in telling.
Yeah. Karen, are you up for it?
I can go if someone wants to keep track of my ahs, ums, and the time.
I got your ahs and ums. Somebody else can get time.
There's got it. Oh.
Okay, Heather's on.
Team it.
Okay, thank you. I joined Toastmasters. I don't even remember how long ago. I think it's been 4 years now, maybe. I joined because I needed to give a speech at the Central California Women's Conference, and it was a 1-hour speech to about 200 to 300 people. And public speaking terrified me before. I would get up in front of maybe a crowd of 20 to 30 people and completely freeze, wouldn't be able to get the words out of my mouth. I would start shaking, my heart was beating fast, my palms were sweaty. It was terrible. I literally could not be a public speaker, but I had a message that I had to tell, and I had been nominated to speak there at the Central California Women's Conference, and I needed to step up my game. So I joined Toastmasters, and I was able to give that speech. I wouldn't say it went flawlessly, but it went really well. I was proud of myself, and I was able to give both a presentation, like a slideshow, as well as speaking in front of the group, walking around the stage, being entertaining as I possibly could. And Toastmasters helped me get there. I have stayed in Toastmasters just because I still feel that I have more that I can develop, and as far as leadership and public speaking, and because I've just become friends with a lot of the members, and it's cool to meet once a week and hang out and see how everyone is doing. So I come here for the camaraderie, and that's it.
Ever been creative on the
Yeah.
timing cards?
Yeah, and Farron has brought a lot of really great things to our club. Is it vegetarian? Am I saying the right thing?
Vegan.
Vegan. And a yoga aficionado. She's she's got a lot of
Vegan too.
real, okay,
Yeah.
there we go.
Another one,
There we go.
Karen.
Yeah. She's brought a health consciousness. Don't show her the pizza over here. She's brought a health consciousness to our club for sure. And our young lady in the middle, who's a
Shelby.
yeah, Shelby.
You don't have to, Shelby, but.
Would you like to tell us if you were invited or why you're here or?
So my name's Shelby Galler. I'm with the Grassroots Strong, which is our newest group that we're forming. And I was invited, I believe, by Eric. I don't know. He came to one of our meetings and sent the flyer. So I wanted to check it out. You know, I think that we all can use brushing up, especially when we're verbalizing, you know, our words and our message. So I'm just here to observe and see, you know, what I can do.
That's super. Thank you. Well, see, you showed up right in the middle of our Zoom screen, which is super cool. That's great. How are we doing on time, Farron? For our schedule?
We're gonna probably need to wrap it up.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd probably wrap it up.
Did Stephen want to say anything? I don't know.
Are you okay?
Just watch.
Okay, that's all right. That's all right. We don't force anything. All right, I'm going. That's great. Thank you. So I'm going to turn this back over to Sarah.
Thanks, Danny. That was the time we get to introduce back to our evaluators, the team of evaluators. So I will introduce them again, and they will give us the reports of how everybody did, and they will get to verbalize it all very clearly for you. I am going to start with our timer, which is Farron Jacobson, and she is also going to take on the odd counter right after.
Yeah. My puppy is definitely squeaking his toy in the background. I apologize. Let's start with Joey. Your speech came in at 7:39, just a little bit over, which is expected of Joey. I'm kidding. I'm not kidding.
Good talk.
You had 7 so's, which isn't too bad. And then I also noticed another thing, it's just nitpicky because you are a very experienced speaker, but you tend to end things with things like that or something like that. Like when you're trailing off on an idea, you'll say, and things like that, just kind of to wrap it up. So I don't know if that's intentional or something that you might want to change and work on and just be more clear and concise with your words. Just something that I noticed. Chanel, I only got 1 so from you. Awesome job. Sarah, I got absolutely nothing, which was amazing. Denny, only 2 so's, and it was 1 in your introduction and then 1 just right now when you handed it over to Sarah. Eric, your table topic was 138, which is perfect with your time. I caught 7 ums, 4 ands, 2 so's, and 1 and so. Kind of put them together. And I didn't get the name of the attorney.
Karen.
Sorry, I didn't catch it again.
Karen.
So it's
Karen.
K-A-R-E-N. So
Got it.
Ren, yeah.
Okay, awesome, Corinne. You came in at 154 for your time on table topics, which is also perfect. Right on the money. I caught 7 us and 1 so. Emerson, your time was 142. You had 1 and 1 It's really great. Matt, was it Matt? Did I catch that right? The college student? Emmanuel. Okay, sorry. Sometimes the audio cuts out. Got it. You came in at 50 seconds, just slightly under for your table topics. I caught 2 7 us, and 1 and grouping them together. Heather, 126, perfect table topics time. I caught 2 and 2 and so's. So you're greatly improved from your year here in Toastmasters. Monica, you came in at 117, which is also perfect for your table topic. I caught 2 so's, 3 and you have a really sneaky I caught 4 of them, but it's like barely an and then you lead into the next word. And the last but not least, 36 seconds for Shelby, which is a little short for your table topics, but I get it. It's hard to speak your very first time here. And I only caught 1 So good. And I'll pass it back to Sarah.
All right, thank you, Farron. Appreciate it. That was very good. So much information in so little time. Very good. Next up, we have Heather. She's going to give us our Grammarian report.
Thank you, Sarah. And I do apologize. I have to exit after I give my report. I am due for another meeting at 1. However, a majority of you did put or have the word of the day, which was verbalize. And please let me know if I missed you, but I heard Sarah, Monica, and Shelby all say it at least 1 time. And then Corinne and Emerson both snuck it in there twice. So good job, everybody. Is there anyone that I missed that said the word of the day?
Heather, you guys froze, so we lost you for about 30 seconds or so. Would you be able to start the grammarian over?
Yeah, absolutely. So the people that I caught with the word today was Sarah, Monica, and Shelby. You all said it 1 time. And then Corinne and Emerson, you both snuck that in twice. So good job. Did I miss anybody that said the word of the day? Oh, and Farron.
Certainly.
And Chanel. Sorry, must have missed that. So, but you're pros. I wouldn't expect anything less. So great job, everybody. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye, Heather. Thank you very much for giving that right before you leave. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
Overall, for the general evaluator, there were so many wonderful things that happened today. It seemed to run very, very smoothly, and everybody seemed very prepared in what they had to say and what they did. I love table topics where all the guests got up to get up and say something today. That was fantastic. And you even used the word of the day. That's impressive. I think that my first time ever getting up, I spoke for maybe 17 seconds or under 30 seconds, sat back down with probably 50 ums and uhs and everything else in between. So I know it's terrifying to get up, and you just had the boldness to do that. I thought that was great, and it was fun. Just the energy I could feel coming from the group in the room and everything. So that was great. And oh, one of the things I really, Denny, in your table topics, how you encouraged, I think it was Emmanuel to speak a little bit longer. I know you've done that for me before, where here's how you can expand it, because we really want to know about who people are and what's going on with them. So overall, I think it ran great. I think we're right on time today. I will hand it back over to Chanel, our Toastmaster.
Thank you, Sarah. And typically this would be the end of our usual meeting agenda, but today, since we're having open house and we have guests with us, we're going to take this time as a Q&A session. If there's any questions that you guys have about anything about pathways, about the usual Toastmaster schedule.
One thing we did go over what a typical meeting, just we have a couple speeches, and this is obviously not a typical meeting.
Yeah, it's fairly typical, except instead of like how Joey did the pathways introduction, we would have a speech there, and then each speech has an evaluator. So at the end, usually when the evaluation team, the timer, counter, Grammarian gives their report, we would also have a speech evaluator, and that's a 2 to 3 minute evaluation of the person's speech to give them feedback about the specific things that they're working on personally and in their pathways curriculum. I think that's the only role that's actually missing from the agenda. So I would just open it up to guests. Any questions that you have about anything, they don't have to be directed at me, but any of our board members can answer. Yeah.
I was curious. I see everything is very regimented and timed, and I assume that's totally on purpose. But how do you arrive at those times?
I think that they're estimates based off of experience with the meeting agenda and knowing about how long things take. So,
if I may, part
yeah,
of doing the agenda has to do with the leadership side of preparing an agenda, making sure we start on time and on time, and keep our speeches to a certain limit. There's definitely a skill in learning how to do that. So that we don't go on and on and on.
And it's always been like that. It's always been regimented. And some things have gone out, some things that we brought into the agenda, but then the times are just adjusted according. The big ones are, like as Denny saying, are the speeches, because those have to be either 4 to 6 minutes, which would be an icebreaker speech, or 5 to 7, most speeches. As you get up higher, the speeches get longer, and then we would have to have we have a 10 to 12 minute speech. That would be the only speech that day. Or we could do 2 speeches, but cut out table topics. We move around just a little bit sometimes, depending on how many speeches we have. Sometimes we don't have any speeches on a day, and we just do table topics the whole time. We can get everybody in on that, but it just depends.
So our meeting is always then a regimented 1 hour.
Yes.
Okay.
Because we want you to be able to get back to work if you need to.
Yeah.
I want to know about the levels and how do you then graduate from them and go into a competition, national or regional or even international?
So the levels, now it's online, it's easily tracked the other way too. We just had to write it out. But now, once you complete a speech, you'll finish. There's I think it's what do you call it? A poll in the beginning. So it'll have 1 to 5. How do you feel you are at communicating such and such? How do you feel at knowing this subject? How do you know, or how do you feel on the research that it's a research speech? Then you rate yourself before you give your speech, and then you rate yourself after you give your speech. Once you rate yourself afterwards, you get credit for that speech. And then once that gets pushed through, then like Farron, she's our VP of education, she'll push through and unlock the next speech. So you can't go ahead, you have to go drip by drip each speech and finish those as you go. With the competition speeches, like the ones we're gonna have, I think some of them are, you have to have at least 5 speeches under your belt first. Some of them are 3. I don't know if there's any where you can't have any. You have to have at least 3
I think,
speeches.
Joey,
Yeah, go for it.
with all of the speech contests now, you have to be level 1 and level 2 completed.
That's not how many, yeah. So you have to finish level 2?
Level 2 has to be completed to be a contestant in the area speech contest. At the club level, you could still compete, you wouldn't be able to move on to area.
Okay.
You can be a star, not a superstar.
Local celebrity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can go through the speeches as quickly as you want to. So if you wanted to do one every week, you could, you know, in 6 weeks, you could.
And who chooses the topic?
You do.
You do.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Correct.
They just give you the parameters. For instance, there was a humorous speech. So I speak 2 languages. So I did half of my speech in Spanish and half of my speech in English, and I put on a skirt on my head, and it was very, you know, you can do whatever you want. But what I was trying to improve was on humor, bringing humor out in I picked my own topic.
More to be storytelling,
Yeah.
presentation,
Yeah.
comfortable with the visual
We
aid.
can talk about anything.
Sometimes that's
I mean,
scary.
yeah.
Sometimes it's, yeah.
I know, can we get a reading of that? I did not see that one. That was more my
I don't think I saw
Reading a book.
You had to be here.
Reading a book? You say something about reading a book?
Do a speech about reading a book.
It sounded like you said that.
That's actually been done.
Yeah.
Fairy tale.
You could do that.
Somebody did that. I've seen that before. I was really good. It was just a story reading of a book, and they acted it out as they did it. Kind of like what Denny's talking about. It was actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I did a speech once about country music, and it was, I used audio examples of good country music and, in my opinion, bad country music.
She's our presentation. stuff. She does visual aids and PowerPoints and stuff. She's really good on the tech side. That is your question? Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Like Farron, for instance, has brought us many speeches on health-oriented things, because that's her area of interest.
Most of the time when I'm out speaking, I'm speaking to government and they only give me either 2 or 3 minutes, which is entirely different than having a conversation because you have to be so succinct. You have to have a clear message. You probably need to repeat it at the end to make sure that it is driven home, but you can't really express very much of an idea.
Right.
You have to find ways to simplify it and yet still keep all of the information relevant.
Well, I want to say that the thing here is that we want you to improve what you want to improve. So if that 3-minute speech is the thing that you need to get perfect at, then that's what will help you work towards. Whatever it is that you need to get better at, that's what we want to do.
Well, that's
what we want
that's
you to
one
do.
on the list, but that is a very important
Yeah.
one because of where my passions are.
Yeah.
And that's one of the rules, not rules, but one of the down and dirties, how to do a speech is you tell them what you're going to tell them, you tell them, and then you tell them what you just told them. Whether that's a 2-minute speech or that's a 10-minute speech, it plays. So for table topics, what we did at the end there, you could do that within that too. I know it's hard to play out a story sometimes in 2 to 3 minutes, but you can cut that story down to a point where you get really good at a couple sentences and it makes the point. Could be a metaphor, you could use a metaphor or simile or whatever. But there's different tactics that you can do. I mean, we've seen a lot of people in 2 minutes give a lot of information and very impactful. So it can be done. You just have, there's some strategies to that.
The idea is to get Toastmasters to help you do whatever it is your goal
Yeah,
is.
right.
We're not trying to fit you into Toastmasters, the other way around.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I often rely on famous quotes. that are
Yeah.
pertinent.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We like to start off like that.
Give me liberty or give me that.
Yeah.
Never said that.
How'd you?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Shelby, do you have any questions on Zoom?
I was just checking out your website while we're talking, and I had no idea that this was even, an option. So I'm very intrigued. So thank you for inviting me, and very interesting. I think we can all be better communicators. That's my goal anyways. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And we will, can one of you on Zoom make sure to get Shelby's email so we can follow up and maybe put one of our emails in the chat too, so she has it.
She knows Eric too, so.
Yeah, I can put it in the comments.
I don't know if I have her email, but I have her cell number.
And I have, oh yeah, and I have Eric's, so we both are connected, so.
Any other questions?
Do you rotate the Toastmaster position like every time?
Yeah, we rotate all of the positions. So ideally, everybody should have all of, do all of the positions, cycle through and then go back to the beginning.
And sometimes you're doing 2 positions.
Yes, sometimes if we don't have enough club members, we're doing double duty.
And so the Toastmaster sets the table topic usually?
No, the table topics master will choose the table topics questions. So
Oh,
There is, however, a theme
yes.
chosen every week. The Toastmaster will open up with that theme.
So like if you turn your agenda over on the back side, you can see for next week, the theme will be think before you speak and read before you think. So the themes are typically general enough that they can be extrapolated upon in multiple directions, depending on where the Toastmaster and the table topics master want to take it.
And we can do table topics completely in different directions.
Like recently, the last couple of weeks, I took on the table topics, and what I did was, if you search in Toastmasters table topics or Toastmasters 365 table topics, 365 different questions. And what we did was I took a Google random number generator. You just type in that, and you put how many, so it's 1 to 365. Click the generate button, and it'll just pick a random number, and then you go to that question, ask the question. Person doesn't know before they walk up there what the question is, or on here before the question is, and so it's more on the spot, spontaneity. That's another one that's very scary for some people. You get a question, I know what they're gonna have to talk on before. That's the way to go. That's the way to go, because if you could do that, you can do anything, right?
Are there any red limits where you go off the topic and somebody tells you that you need to go back to the topic, or
That would never happen. You can even flip it. So if Joey asked you a question and you can have an answer to it, you could in your mind think, well, how can I do the reverse of it?
Yeah.
But just, tie it in. The whole point is just to talk for a couple of minutes.
Like I'm gonna ask you, what's your favorite color? And you go, I don't know what my favorite color is, but I can tell you about my favorite shape. And you tell me
oh,
my
okay,
favorite
so
shape.
you turn the topic.
Sure.
Sounds like a foot.
Unless, of course, you wanted us to be particularly hard on you. We could arrange.
Good questions.
Yeah, excellent.
Emmanuel, you got it?
I'm a little confused on what pathways, so I'm gonna have to go like online and just pretty much fill out the evaluation form. And it's gonna like.
So next step, if you're thinking about joining, so you can come to 3 of these meetings. Say come to 3 just so you can see. And I would even advise come to another one that's a little bit more on the agenda. Actually, it's not an open house, so you can get a feel for it. And then the next step would be we'd send you an application you can fill out. And then once you get that done, payment info on there, I send you an email with step-by-step how to log in, how to pick your path, how to get into pathways. And then from there, it's not self-explanatory because it's not the best system. Like their website, they redid it and it's not the best, but we have, what I got to mention earlier was mentors. So we can assign you a mentor that can walk you through it. And any one of us, Chanel, Danny, even Emerson, you've been around and can help, and our obviously Farron and Sarah can help with all that. So we can mentor you at every step on whatever you needed. But we can get you into that. We can send you the Icebreaker Speech, the outline before you even get in, so you know what you're going to be, the outline of the speech that you would give beforehand if you wanted to that answer your question? Sometimes you gotta do by learning, right? Learn by doing. So,
And I will
some
say
people-
on Toastmasters.org, there's a tremendous amount
Oh,
of
it's fine.
information on there. Just go on there and pretty much any question that you have. It'll be answered.
I've been checking out some clubs, but this is actual first one.
Okay,
Oh,
cool.
okay,
Yeah,
all right.
you can check out other clubs.
Yeah, absolutely. You can even be a member of more than one. club.
Yeah. You have that.
That's true.
Yeah, I think there's at least 5 clubs in the Fresno area,
Mhm.
probably more,
More, yeah.
6 or 7 maybe.
Mhm.
In person or all virtual?
Good
I
question.
don't know. I don't know how many.
And some have dissolved, and some didn't make it through the COVID thing, and
Our club did it.
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah,
I think everyone's just emerging together.
yeah. I mean, we had 15, 20 strong
Mhm.
coming to meetings, and all that happened.
A bit wise.
A bit wise, yeah. We're building back up too.
So is the focus then on extemporaneous speaking or just wherever it is you want it to be? Because I mean, giving a prepared speech is dramatically different
Oh, yeah.
than speaking off the cuff.
It's both. So the speeches are more of the plan. The table topics, which is always a portion of our meetings, is extemporaneous. Yeah, and sometimes they'll ask a question and then you can volunteer. Like the hardest one is not knowing, going up, and then boom, here's your question. That's the hardest. That's not every table topics, so don't let that scare you. We do much, it's very creative. We're very creative on some stuff. Sometimes we do not necessarily political related, but more of like what was the original intent of the table topics? It was a current event. We take a current event, you have a pro and con. And even if you were pro, we tell you to argue the con, or do the opposite. So we're very creative with what we can do. It doesn't have to be politics, it would be anything, pro and con. So those are interesting ones too.
We've had people come in that they're going to be giving a speech at a particular event, as you heard. But Sarah, for instance, gave a speech at the director of her organization. So she came in and practiced it here as part of her program.
Good.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. I will close the meeting out then. The only thing that we need to do before adjourning is make sure that we assign roles for our meeting next week. Emerson, I have you down to give a speech. Is that still?
Yeah, we're good.
You're good to go? Okay. Then firstly, can I get somebody to volunteer to evaluate Emerson's speech? I can. Denny? Okay. Awesome. Our master evaluator. And can somebody volunteer to do Toastmaster? Sarah, are you going to be able to make it next week?
Yes, wherever you need me. What do you need?
Would you like to do table topics?
I'd love to do table topics. Yes.
You will want to be here next week. Sarah's best on table.
All right, we got
The
some dream team going on. Okay, I will put myself in as general evaluator and I'll have to email everybody. Okay, well, officially, thank you everybody for coming and
Thank you.
I adjourn this meeting of Fresno City Toastmasters.
Very good. We'll want to make sure that we have everyone's email so that she can send the invitation.
Bye, guys.
All right.
Or send the.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Shelby. Bye, Graham.
Thank you.
Bye, Shelby.
Bye.